Today's guest started competing at 20 years old in the OCB before moving on to compete in the NPC, where she found her true passion and competed in 2 shows before a 4-year health hiatus. Then she came back and did 12 shows, earning her pro card at her 6th national show, which was nationals in 2022, where she placed 2nd in Open Class F. She works as an online coach for posing, fitness, and nutrition. And I'm very excited to welcome Tori Parella. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good too. Happy to see you. And I got to start by asking if there is something you think about or maybe a ritual you have right before your heel hits the stage.
I would say recently, probably the past like 2 shows that I've done, national level shows. I used to get really nervous before I would get on stage. And then lately, or the past 2 times I stepped on stage, I was like, you know what? Like, I've worked really hard to get here. Like, it is what it is. Like, just breathe. So I take a big deep breath in, I exhale, and then I say a little like prayer to myself, and I'm like, all right, go kill it. And then walk out there like you own it.
I love
um,
that.
yeah, I mean, everyone gets nervous for sure, and it's hard not to get nervous. It means that you care, but I think channeling that into like a positive way and trying to like take that as like um, use that for the stage and not like knock yourself down and get anxious that way.
Yes, absolutely. Like channeling the nervous energy into your power and your ability
Yeah.
to crush it versus like letting it overtake you.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I definitely like that's something that I've learned as I've gotten older. But even like playing sports, I used to get like so anxious before games. And then I over the years have like learned to like channel that in a positive way instead of a negative way. So yeah.
Okay. What sports did you play growing up?
I did competitive soccer from the age of 8 to I think I stopped playing when I was like 17, 18 years old. So before games, I mean, when I was younger, I don't think I really like realized the magnitude of the games, but as I got older and we started doing well, made it to like championships before and stuff like that, like the bigger games, I used to get like super anxious. And then my mom owned a dance studio. That's what she did for her profession. And she put my sister and I into dance classes when we were like 2 and 3, just to keep an eye on us. Like that was like her babysitting. And
Aw.
then as we got older, we just stayed with it. So we danced until, oh my gosh, my sister still dances like here and there, and she's 33. So but I stopped probably, I think I was like 27, 28 when I stopped dancing, but
Wow.
yeah.
What did you dance for?
All types. I mean, we did ballet, tap, jazz. I did point for a few years, hip hop, all that stuff. And then we had a competitive team, so I did that when I was younger. But yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
That's amazing. I love that. So has that influenced like your posing or the way you approach competing?
Yeah, definitely. I get that a lot. Like people are like, how do you look so natural on stage? And I'm like, I think it just comes from dance, like putting on a performance and kind of like that persona that you want to put out there. Definitely comes from dance. Cause I mean, we all have to be a little like extra when you pose. Like you have to kind of channel like that that bad bee like energy kind of. And I think that comes from dance, like being able to like put on a show and like perform.
That's amazing. Yeah, I think that's something that's always cool when I see people who pose who have a dance background and how they approach it. Actually, the woman I just interviewed today earlier, whose episode will of course come out the Friday before yours, she also had a dance background and said it influenced how she approached like building her pro routine, like literally to pro debut 4 days later. And I think having that background is really cool because you can use it to your advantage. And like you said, you can almost like channel it. Plus, you have that somewhat more comfortability on stage as well. Now you did say that you had stopped soccer at like 17. Was it because dance was taking over a lot of your focus, or was it more so just other things?
Actually, um, it was so I was diagnosed with anorexia when I was 13. And then I kind of battled that until I was about 20 years old when I found bodybuilding. But I was in and out of hospitals and treatment centers from probably 15 until I was 18 years old. And I was, I don't know, the way that they approached it, I don't necessarily, I don't want to say I don't agree with it. Just it didn't work for me the way that they went about it. But exercise and working out and sports was the way for me to get rid of my anxiety and my depression and like channel my thoughts and like my feelings and my emotions into something positive. So when they took away sports from me because I was too sick or I was abusing the privilege, I think that's when things actually got worse for me. So they actually pulled me out of soccer because I was being quote unquote I don't want to say punished, but that's kind of how I felt in the moment. So they took that away from me just because I was too sick. And I wasn't, you know, holding up my end of the bargain in a sense. My parents said that I could continue to play sports and stuff, but I had to follow what the doctors were telling me to do. And I wasn't to that degree. So I stopped playing soccer for that reason. And then dance, I mean, I was like in and out of dance classes from there, but I didn't actually stop dancing until I got older. But soccer was something that I had to kind of give up.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that because I think that's a common experience. And from the work I did in the counseling field and my overall perspective on eating disorder treatment, I think there can be a time and place for it, but I often find it's very controlling environment to a place where like a lot of times people go in there, they want more control in their life, and then they're put in a place that's controlling everything. And on top of that, they're being told that they can't be who they want to be, and they're being defined by their eating disorder. So they're literally being told like you are this disorder versus, is that what your experience was? You're nodding.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Something that I appreciated was my sister, who's like my best friend. She didn't treat me differently. Like when I was diagnosed, like my whole family, it definitely changed our dynamic and changed um just everything. Like I felt like people like looked at me like I was like an alien. Like they were like scared to say things. They were scared to like interact with me. They didn't know like how I would take things. So the one thing I really appreciated about my sister specifically was that she didn't treat me differently. Like I was still her little sister. I was still Tori. I was still funny. I was still like all the things that I was before. And I think a lot of people when I was diagnosed, they were like, oh, like now she has an eating disorder, like she's weird or like she has a problem or whatever. So that kind of like put kind of like an A on my chest, kind of, you know what I mean? Like I just felt like I was like singled out. Um and that's why I did love sports so much, was because it kind of gave me something else to focus on. And then also like just like the teammates that I had, the friendships that I made, like they were all very similar and like they cared about me and they wanted me to be okay, but they didn't treat me differently. So when they took me out of that environment and forced me into this like environment where all we talked about was like our triggers and our eating disorder and like therapy, and like I was just consumed by it all the time and I felt like I didn't have that escape that I needed. So that was very difficult for me, was when they took that stuff away from me. I didn't know how to like behave basically. Like I lost like you said, it was my identity in a sense, and I felt like I lost like who I was as a person and who I was trying to be. Um and I definitely understand like if someone is abusing the privilege of like working out and like using it to, you know, negate things. Like if I felt like I ate too much, like I definitely like overcompensated with things, but taking it away from me 1,000% instead of like trying to teach me like how to view exercise and how to eat properly, they just like took it away from me completely. Like there was no like, okay, well, we don't do that when this happens. Instead, like, let's do this. It was just like, you don't get to do this anymore, like, period, the end. So that was definitely difficult.
I see the same thing, honestly, in this sport too. And
Mm.
it's a big reason why I wanted to bridge the gap between competitors and mental health professionals, or access to people who understand the competitor life. And because I've helped now, like, literally hundreds of women with their relationship with food, their body image, their goals, what I've found is so many of them have felt like they have to give up competing to make peace, but you really don't. And I think it's unfortunate. The same thing happens in this scenario you've just described, but I was seeing it happening in the competitor space, like people quitting competing because they thought it ruined them, or oh, people who are influencers saying you should just quit competing because it's going to destroy your relationship with food. But I think when we actually transform our intentions and the way that we view things and the reasons for those things, and then we understand our behaviors from a deeper perspective, not just for physique changes, but a broad outlook, it better informs our approach and helps it to be healthier. And I know you often preach about being willing to reinvent yourself. And I think that speaks to the identity side of things. And you've talked about transforming yourself for your life and being more than one thing. And I think I'm starting to put some of these pieces together as to why that's become so important for you. So are there other personal transformations or maybe breakthroughs you've had or endured that created or informed that mindset for yourself?
I'm going through one kind of right now. I am back in school for nursing, and
Wow.
um, yeah, it's been great. It's definitely like it's hard.
Mhm.
But it's awesome and I love it and I'm very excited to pursue that. But I think that for me, like coming out of a competition season, I was in prep literally for a year. Like I started prep in January for the 2022 season and I finished my last show in December. So that was a very long time to be in prep. I honestly like did not feel tired. I did not feel fatigued, like I didn't feel like I was like mentally like suffering or anything like that. So that's the reason why we, continue to pursue competition after competition. And my coach Andrew Barry is like, we've been working together for 4.5, 5 years. So he understands like my mindset and the way that I am and like knows all my history. But going from being in prep for that long and then having like the transition be not all about prep and all about bodybuilding to something else, definitely challenging for me in a sense, but also like very much needed. Like I think that a lot of times people suffer or struggle with like, prep is a lot. It's time consuming. You have to give it 1,000%. Yeah, so my coach Andrew Barry has been amazing. We've been working together for like I want to say 4.5 or 5 years. So he knows like how I am and like my whole history. But going from being in like a prep mindset and then the focus is bodybuilding and like, have to get up and do my cardio and work out and all this stuff. It was tough enough trying to balance like work and that and life, and I have 3 dogs, and so like trying to do all of that stuff. But going through that transition from being in prep and having the focus be on like your body and like weight loss and all that stuff to now coming out of it and being the focus on school has been a positive thing for sure. But definitely challenging. Like, I mean, taking a step back in general and like trying to like be a normal human being after being in prep for so long is like definitely like challenging on its own. And I don't know if anyone else like feels like this. If you do, like please let me know that I'm not alone. But like when you're in prep and you get used to your body feeling a certain way, like and your clothes fitting a certain way, and then when you come out of prep and they don't fit a certain way and like your body doesn't feel how it used to feel, like mentally it's definitely difficult. And I'm wondering if being in prep for that long has like really made it more difficult this time around, because I'm like not, I don't want to say I'm like struggling, but I'm definitely like having a harder time with that like transformation for sure. But it's part of it. Can't be can't be that lean all the time. That's like not okay.
Right. And I think
Yeah.
you're onto something too with it, like that length of time, because if for that many days out of the year or a whole year practically, you were basically reinforced positively for getting leaner, getting tighter, then it's like our mind or our eyes are slower to adjust almost, I think, to the fact that like, okay, now we're putting on body fat, but because we reinforced it for so long, that pathway has become so strong. It's like weird that it's not going down the same pathway anymore, it seems.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, like in just like hormones, I mean, I'm lucky, I think, in the sense that I've gotten my period back like very not very quickly, but pretty quickly considering. Thankfully. So things are like functioning and stuff, but just like going through that and like having that all the symptoms and all the things like happening hormonally, like I think that that is also very challenging for women in general. I mean, like every month, like it's a whirlwind of hormones and emotions and like things, and then trying to add in like you were saying, like your brain gets like used to thinking a certain way about how you look, and like you're getting comments and feedback, and your coach is saying positive things, and people are saying like, oh, you look so lean and all this stuff, and then that stuff kind of stops, and then you're like, is this okay? Like, is this
Right.
normal? Is my body supposed to be looking like this or feeling like this? So I know I've had a few girls like reach out to me recently because I've been pretty open about like that type of feeling and how I've been feeling. And they're like, yeah, I definitely am like having a harder time like with that type of stuff. So if you feel like that, you're not alone. I promise. Like everyone feels like that. No one just likes to talk about it because that's like not cool, or I don't know. Like I feel like that's the problem with social media sometimes. Like people don't want to be real and vulnerable and be like, I don't know, struggling or showing that. Like everyone's, like, oh, I have a six pack all the time. It's like, I don't.
Yeah,
I
totally.
definitely don't. Like certain times of the day, maybe, but like your body shouldn't look like that all the time. So yeah, but
Exactly. It's a very common struggle that comes with the territory of this sport. And I think the more people like yourself or myself who are open about those experiences or share all phases, like that's another issue is a lot of people aren't sharing every phase. They're only showing themselves lean. So then people like think that's how it's supposed to be. But when we show like this is me 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 18, 19 weeks post show, and people see like a more normal, but you know what I mean, it's still very elite considering the general population, but
right,
the physique of a woman, it's like they see like, okay, I understand health can look like that, and that's okay. And it
right.
is definitely an adjustment, that's for sure, especially coming out of a prep. But now that you have come so far and you've been able to also like have your health with your period and everything like that, what are you currently focusing on aside from
Um,
your nursing degree?
yeah. So as far as like physique slash, I guess like competing, I definitely am taking probably, I want to say like a year to maybe more than that. Just to, I mean, I was in prep for a year, so getting my body back to a normal functioning level. Um, all optimal things. Like I want to make sure that my hormones are good, all my blood work comes back normal, sleep is good, digestion is good, energy is good, like all of that. And then also just like, focusing on school and getting through that. But competing, like I definitely want to do a pro debut for sure. That's been on my bucket list since I started competing. And like when I finally, got into the NPC and started realizing like that you could become a pro and like what that meant. And then that was like the only thing that I wanted for so long. So I definitely want to do a pro debut, but I'm also realistic with myself. I mean, these girls are that, you know, go to the Olympia and all that stuff, like they're elite, like they're the top tier. It would be absolutely amazing to do a pro debut and to place even like top 10. Like that is like something that I've only dreamed of, but I don't know how soon that will be. I don't know when that will happen, but it's definitely on my bucket list for sure. But I just turned 30 in September. So I'm getting older. That's not old, I'm just getting older. And my husband and I would like to have kids soonish. I mean, again, like I told him, like, you know, let's try and get through nursing school and like focus on that. So I mean, I feel like that's also something that women struggle with in a sense, like if they're, you know, on the younger side, or they're, you know, 30s and they, you know, turn pro or whatever, and then they also have like this like time frame kind of in their head. And I don't know, I feel like I have all of a sudden felt that, I don't want to say pressure because it's not, I don't feel pressure to have children. I want to have children, but I think I feel that pressure of like almost a timeline. Like, how am I going to squeeze all of this stuff in? And I think that that's something that it's okay and it's valid to feel like that. And if you do feel like that, just know again that you're not alone. But you know, if you have a significant other, like sitting down and kind of talking with them, like, listen, like these are my goals. This is what I would like to accomplish within the next 2 to 3 years. You know, and talk to them about it. Cause like, again, like you're in a relationship with someone and you want to be like honest with them. And thankfully my husband is very understanding and knows like, you know, nursing school is the #1 priority. He's very supportive of competing. I mean, he's come to all my shows. He's been, you know, dealing with all of that and prep and all that stuff. So he knows that that's something that I want to do. But I don't have a time frame. Like, and I mean, there's people that were like, oh, you should do a pro debut like right after your show. But I was even on stage with the other girls in my class, like I was on the smaller side, like muscle wise and just like developmentally wise. I've always been kind of a petite person. I'm 5'6", so I'm tall. I'm a little lankier, I guess, but yeah, I mean, I think that I know where my flaws are. I know where I need to like excel. And if I want to stand on a pro stage, like I want to make sure that I like put in the work to get there. So
That's awesome. I think it's really cool. You have to have a bit of that objective eye and be honest and real with yourself in this sport, because otherwise you will spin your wheels. Like I know I did that to myself for a while. Just like kept spinning my wheels because I was like, I'm just gonna keep pushing. It's like I didn't have what I needed, and I still don't. And in this sport, it's like we never will.
yeah.
We're always growing. And then I want to touch back on something you brought up, which is like a common theme lately with women I've been speaking with, not even just through the podcast, but in general, like the idea of timelines and women. Like, I don't think people necessarily understand it, but like from a young age, I know you understand this, but like we start developing faster than men because of our timeline. We have to be like mentally more mature and prepared because by
We
the
have
time
to have kids. Like,
yes,
we're responsible for other human beings. Like we need to have our poop in a group. Like we need to know what's going on. Yes, I agree. Yeah.
yeah, and literally like it's now we live in an age where we really do, a lot of us have to work as well in addition with our partner. So it's usually 2 income households. And then you add on top of that, like you want to have kids. So yes, you can have kids into your 40s, but do you want to be like 60 when they're 20? Nothing wrong with that. My parents, you know, they had me at a older age, but you know, it just depends on what you want. So that pressure, I love how you said it's valid. And I think people really need to hear that listening. Like if you have that pressure on you, or even if it's not pressure, but it's that kind of looming, like, okay, well, if I need 2 years to grow, and then that puts me, like for me, I'm like, okay, I'm 26, I need to grow. I'm only taking a year to grow. Is that enough time? I'm going to be 27. If I win my pro card, then what? And then my boyfriend's much older than me. If we, you know, take it to the next level, what's going to happen? Like, how does he want it? And There's been a conversation between us too of like, what's the future look like? Should things continue on a positive track? And having those conversations, like you said, you're having with your husband, I think is so important. And it's difficult sometimes for women because we're like, well, we want to do it all and we know that we can, but and maybe we don't want to press pause on one dream for another.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I was at. Like I had a lot of people kind of like last year, I was in prep for a year. Like people were like, "Are you nuts?" And I was like, kind of. But again, like I talked with my coach and I was like, if I'm stalling in my progress and I'm not making progress and my body is not responding, then absolutely like let's pull it, let's pull the plug, like it's not worth it. But every show I did, I just continue to kind of get better and like fine tune things. And people were like, I mean, I don't think that I necessarily like grew into a show because you are in a caloric deficit and like you are kind of like pushing, but I definitely think that we just were able to like fine tune things. So like when I came in December, that was absolutely hands down the best package that I could have brought to the stage. And thankfully everything turned out the way that we hoped for and worked for. But I was on a mission to get my pro card this past year. I was like, I will do the shows that I need to do. I will push the way that I need to push. Like whatever you ask me to do, I will do. Like I was on a mission to make it happen. For multiple reasons, but mostly because I was like I had a goal. I developed a goal when I was like 20, I think I was 27 or 28. I had a very realistic talk with myself. I was like, if I don't turn pro by the time that I am 30, as in like I turn 30 by the end of that year, if I don't turn pro within that time frame, then I think that I just need to, I don't want to say give up because I would never say like give up in a bad way, but I was like, I think I need to be realistic with myself and like I was saying before, you put so much energy and time into bodybuilding that I definitely felt like I was not, pouring equally into all of my cups that I had going on. So I was like, I need to, focus on other things in my life. And like maybe I come back to the stage when I'm in my later 30s, that's fine. And I can still turn pro. They have masters, they have all these awesome things. But I had that goal of turning pro within my 30th birthday within that year. So I was like pretty much hell bent on that. Like I was like, we have to do this. But I also kind of felt that pressure of like, if I don't turn pro, like it's kind of over. And then that realization like hit me after, I think it was Universe. I came third and that was the second time I had missed my pro card last year. And I knew that I didn't deserve a pro card at that show. Like there was areas that I needed to improve on and I definitely was not like upset about it. But it was like a few days after my show and I was at the gym and I was walking on the treadmill and I just all of a sudden like had this like wave of like pressure. And then I was like, oh my God, what if I don't turn pro? And then what if I have to stop competing? And then like, what about kids? And then what about this? And then I was like, I'm starting school in January and like all of these things started kind of like flooding into my brain. And I was like very much overwhelmed and had this like wave of almost like panic and like pressure. And I was like, I remember calling my mom and I was like, so I need to talk to you and like I need your advice. And she is amazing and she gave me, really good advice. But I think that it is like you were saying, like women, I don't know if it's like lately or if it's like the time frame that we're in, the era that we're in, like women want to do everything and anything and they absolutely can, but it's a matter of like how and like the logistics of it and figuring out kind of like what's more important right now in this time frame. And like you were saying, there's no right or wrong time to have a kid, but I definitely I don't want to be like 40 and having children. I would kind of like to have them like mid 30s. that's just my preference. But yeah, I definitely feel like women are like, we can do everything that we absolutely want and we should. It's just a matter of like what's important and what we need to focus on. Um, and like you were saying, like having that conversation with your partner, your significant other, husband, boyfriend, whatever it is. Because that, I mean, they definitely have, obviously they have a vote, but like you're the one that's carrying the kid, so like you need to figure out like when does that make sense for you. um so yeah, I'm in that kind of like mindset time frame right now. Like I'm like, when is that gonna, when am I gonna squeeze all this in? Like,
Yes. It's
yeah,
like we don't like we can do everything and anything, and we feel like we have to do it before we're like 36.
yeah,
But we
yeah.
don't, you know?
No, I mean, and I feel like, I don't know if you feel like this, but like for me, I'm like, in my head, I was like, I turned 30 and I definitely was like, that was a tough pill to swallow, kind of. Like I was like, oh my God, I'm 30. Like, oh my God. I didn't like really like think that that day would come. Like,
Mm-hmm.
like I knew it would, but I was like, oh, my 30th birthday, like that doesn't sound cute anymore. Like, but it's fine, it's fine. Everything's fine. But yeah, I definitely like I turned 30 and I was like, oh, like I'm an adult. Like I'm not 20 anymore. Like I need to like figure my stuff out and like get my life organized. And yeah, the realization of like I want to have kids and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't know. I just turned 30 and I kind of was like, oh my God. Like it just all of a sudden like hit me like I'm actually an adult and I have like, responsibilities and like, kids, and I want to do all of that. And I think that it was definitely like I don't want to say it wasn't a slap in the face because there's nothing wrong with being 30 or being older than that. Um, but yeah, it definitely was. I was kind of struggling for a little bit after I turned 30. I was like, oh gosh, gotta grow up a little bit, I guess. I don't know.
I think age and birthdays always puts things in perspective because it's another year that, in the most negative way, it reminds us that we are gonna die at some point. Just
No, it's
that
getting
was dark,
closer.
but it's true.
Seriously, yeah. I
It's
know.
like, oh dang, that's another year down.
You're like, yeah, like you're like, oh God. Or it's like um, I haven't accomplished all the things I want to accomplish yet. And you're like, and then you're over there like making lists, like, what haven't I done yet? What do I need to do? Like, how do I, yeah. It's definitely, I mean, it's a good and a bad thing. I think it definitely
Yes.
kind of like wakes you up. Like for me, it was like, I mean, I've had a couple different career paths. And I enjoyed all of them, but I think I kind of like woke up when like after I turned 30 and I had already the plan to go back to school for nursing. Um and I was like, okay, like you really need to do this because you have responsibilities, but also like I when I have kids, I want to make sure that I set them up for the best life possible. Like I don't want to ever, you know, I had amazing parents, and I anything I wanted to do for the most part, like extracurricular activities, sports, they always said yes. And I never want to go to my children and say, no, you can't do that because I can't afford it, or I don't know. And I know that sounds like silly, and I know that like obviously there's going to be budgets and there's going to be like, certain things that they're not going to be able to do, or I'm going to be like, I'm not buying you, $70 pair of shoes to wear for a couple months because you're going to grow out of them or something like that. But I just always I want my kids to experience all the things that they want to, and that I was able to do, and like family vacations and traveling. So that was definitely a big motivator for me to like go back to school. Like I was like, I want to have a career that I'm invested in and proud of, but also like that will set me up for a good career path for my children too. So I was kind of like, okay, get your stuff together, Tori. Like, let's go. Yeah.
That's awesome that you've committed to nursing school. Now, are you doing this while also working as a trainer and posing coach? Wow. Okay. So what's like a normal day like for you?
So I also am currently working at a hospital as a nursing assistant. And I have right now I'm part-time with the option to pick up more time. So usually working 2 to 3 days a week, 12-hour shifts. So if I do that and I want to go to the gym that day, then that means I get up between like 3:30 and 4 o'clock and then go to the gym and do that. And then I go to work from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. So work days are kind of tough to like pretty much do anything else. By the time you get home, it's like 7:15 ish. Take the dogs for a walk, unpack, shower, pass out, wake up, do it again. But then on school days, I have a little bit more flexibility with that, but I definitely my days off from work, I'm in school, and then I'm also like trying to pose with girls, whether it's on FaceTime or in person. I prefer in person if I can, just because at least for the first few sessions, especially if they've never posed before, because I feel like hands-on is just like easier to teach, easier for them to mimic. So I definitely like to do that. So yeah, if I'm posing and doing that stuff, it's definitely a full day, but I've always I've always been better when I have like almost too much going on. Um I just perform better under pressure kind of, and like I'd rather be like busy than sitting there not bored, but just kind of like feeling like I should be doing something else. Because also like when you do have those days off, like you get to enjoy it and you're like, it feels good to have a day off and like relax versus like, well, I feel like I should be doing something else or um but yeah, it's been busy since I've been back to school for sure, but it's all good. We're gonna manage. We're managing.
Absolutely. Where are you located for posing coaching in person?
So I pose out of two gyms right now. I pose out of the gym Norton, and then the other one is General Fitness in Fall River. So I usually go out of those two locations, and then also, um, obviously FaceTime. And I'm kind of hoping because we have a somewhat finished basement. I'm like
Ooh.
thinking maybe, yeah, one side I could put like some mirrors and stuff, or maybe have people come to my house, which would be cool. And then also like good for me too, because it would be good to practice and stuff. So we'll see. We'll see if my husband will be. I'm sure he will. He would love to. He likes projects and stuff, so maybe he'll help me out with that, but that would be good.
That's awesome. Well, I think it's really great that you've been able to do that. And yes, you have busy days, but you're really channeling that energy that you like, which is having a lot to do. And I want to backtrack to something you had said earlier too, which was how you had missed your pro card, you barely missed your pro card, and then you went on and you came close again at Universe, and then you finally earned it at Nationals. And you had gone from 8th place to 10th place to 9th place, and then you jumped, which is really an awesome jump. So what was your feedback at each show, and what do you think contributed to this progression for you?
Um, I think the jump honestly was, yeah, I was always like in the top 10 mix at my other shows. And I think honestly for me, it was just glute development and making sure that I was training the way that I should be training. And again, I don't think there's anything wrong. Like people are always asking me, like as a trainer and as like, a competitor, like, what's the right way to train? And it's not that I don't like that question, but I think that it's like it's very, very individual. And I learned that like if there's an exercise that I am not feeling the way that I should be feeling it, that I'm not going to do it. Like, or sometimes I'll be doing specifically like if I'm doing like stiff leg deadlifts and I start feeling it in my lower back, then I know that like I need to adjust something, whether it's the weight or it's the, you know, the number of reps that I'm doing, my stance, maybe I need to like do something differently, or maybe I just do 2 sets and I'm like, you know what, this is not the way that I should be feeling it. So also like taking time off, that is like huge. And it's so hard because I used to hate taking time off. I used to be like, what am I gonna do with myself? Like, I don't know, like bodybuilding is my life, like all of this stuff. But definitely training properly for you and then taking the time off. And I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, but that's the only time that you're really gonna make the progress that you need to make. I mean, are you gonna really be able to put on size if you're always in a caloric deficit? No. Like that's just not, you're not gonna be able to put the tissue on that you need. And I also want to think that again, like age is just a number, but being older and having that muscle maturity and that muscle density, I think that that's like a huge factor. I know it was only like 2 years between shows, but like I took an entire year off and really focus on like training and like putting on the tissue that I need to put on. And then also just having that like muscle maturity there. I think that was also a huge factor. And then my coach was said, okay, all right, like I used to train with my husband like all the time. We literally trained together pretty much every single day. And I did a very like bodybuilder-esque split. And I trained with the guys. And that's the way I love to train. I like to train heavy, I like to train hard, I like to train intense. But my coach is like, listen, like you have the density and you have the maturity, but he's like, you need to stop training like a bodybuilder and start training like a bikini competitor. And that I was kind of like, what does that mean? But it's true. Like I had a ton of like leg development in almost, I don't want to say a bad way, but for bikini, it wasn't what they were looking for. Like I had very overpowering adductors. And then also like my quads were overpowering in my back shot. So like toning those things down and then bringing up my glute development to make that kind of like match the rest of my like legs. So yeah, that was like a big factor, like changing the way that I was training and adding in like more glute isolation workouts and less like hamstring quad movements.
Interesting. Okay, so having to make that change to your training after training like that for so long and enjoying it, was that difficult? Because I imagine then you also stopped training with other people.
Yeah. Yeah, it was definitely hard. Like I said, my husband and I trained together pretty much every day. And then he was also training with our friend James. And so I went from training with them to training like, and before I met my husband, I trained by myself pretty much. Like I literally had randomly, I would have like people be like, hey, can I like work out with you? But I'm very particular, and I don't mean this in a bad way, or like I'm not trying to be like mean. Like when I work out, I'm like in the zone and I'm like focused and I'm there to do a job. Like I don't go for like social hour. I don't go to like, you know, do a few exercises and then like stop and talk or like whatever. So I was very particular about like who I trained with and like whatever. So yeah, it was definitely a big change for me to go from like working out with people to working out by myself again. But I don't know, there's something about being in my own little world and like putting in my music and like focusing, and I did miss that, I'm not gonna lie. I miss training with my husband sometimes, but it was just like a nice kind of change of pace to kind of go back to like where I started from. But I do train with Chandler, one of my friends. I train with her. If I'm not working on the weekends, I train with her and we do glutes together on Saturdays. So I train with her pretty religiously on the weekends. But
That's
yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
Is she a competitor too?
Yeah. So she competed in figure this past year. She's working with my husband for coaching. And she's put on so much size already. I'm so excited for her. So she's gonna do figure again, and I'm like super.
Yay.
Yeah.
That's
So she's
awesome.
excited. Yeah.
Love that. Well, it seems like you were willing to do what you needed to do and are needing to do to bring something even better. And in your journey to earning your pro card, there was a video you had posted where your name was called, but you started to move to the outside of the lineup, but you were really being called to move to the middle. So walk us through that moment and what was going through your mind.
Oh my gosh. That was like the funniest moment of my life, practically. I mean, like I truly, truly thought that it was just not my time. Yeah, so I remember being backstage with the girls and they were all super nice and we're all like pumping up and I'm kind of getting a little anxious and whatever, and they start lining us up and I'm standing back there and I'm like, oh man, like I don't know, like this is gonna be tough. These girls are awesome, like they're incredible, they're so nice, like all this stuff. And then I had a moment where I was like doubting myself and I was like, do I don't want to say, I wasn't like, do I deserve to be here? But I was kind of like, do I have what it takes to achieve the goal that I have? And I was like, you know what? Like, stop thinking like that. Like, you're already here. Like, why are you going to knock yourself down when you're literally standing backstage before you go on? So I stopped the negative thinking. I was like, okay, like, you're fine. And then I was like, I had a goal, obviously, to win my pro card. I was like, I wanted it. But I was like, you know what? If you get into the top 5, like first call out, like that's fantastic. Like that's kind of like where my mind was at. So we go out, we did our comparisons, we did our individual. I made it to the first call out. I was like, okay, like first goal done. Like, yeah. And then I was to the outside of the box and they called my number to switch with somebody, and I looked to the center first, but the girl didn't raise her hand yet. So then I was like, oh, like, okay. And then literally in the back of my head, I was like, it's fine. Wasn't your time. Like, these girls are incredible. Like, you had a great season. Like, whatever. It is what it is. So I started walking away, and then I'm standing behind this girl and I'm like, why is she not moving? Like, she's supposed to be moving to the center. And the expediter came over and he's like, no, to the box, to the box. And I remember just being like, I wish you could have seen my face. I just was like, me? Like, I remember being like, I don't know. I think that you're wrong, like whatever. So I'm standing in the box, and then I remember looking down under my feet, and I was standing in the center, and I remember just being like in shock kind of, but then I was like, I felt like I was dreaming. And I kind of blacked out a little bit because then I got off stage and I was so confused when I got off stage. I was like standing there kind of like looking around, like, where do I go from here? Like, I don't know what just happened. Like, and then this girl, that was in my class, I didn't even know who she was. I had said like 2 words to her. She came running over to me and gave me this like giant hug. I'm gonna like get emotional.
Oh.
She gave me this giant hug and she just said, you did it. You got your pro card. Like, you did it. And I just like I broke down and I started like bawling my eyes out on this girl that I didn't even know. And I just remember thinking like, this is crazy. And I was like, she's so sweet for like, giving me a hug. She didn't even know who I was. Like, I was like, this was so nice of her. And then I had 2 teammates there with me and they both came like running over and jumped on top of me, and I just like bawled my eyes out. And then I walked out and my husband was standing right there and he was like had tears in his eyes, and then I lost it again and I was like, you guys are killing me. Like, but it was just like, I don't know. And the other day, actually, like, I don't think it's really like sunk in. And I don't know if it ever really will until I do a pro debut, maybe. I'm not even sure if it will even hit me then. But it just kind of hit me the other day that I was like, oh yeah, like I did that. I accomplished that goal, and like I am a pro, and like it still feels really weird and like crazy to say. And I still have people that come up to me from general fitness where we train out of for the most part, and they just will come up and they'll be like, congratulations, and like all this stuff, and it's still like so surreal and so crazy. And I don't think it will ever really like fully sink in until I don't even know if I do a pro debut, if it will actually like hit me. But it comes in waves. Like sometimes all of a sudden it will just like hit me that I'm like actually like an IFBB pro. And I actually like did that, but it's crazy. I didn't, not that I didn't think it would ever happen, but I just, it's something that you work so hard for so long, and it's like become kind of like your identity. Um, and then when you accomplish it, it kind of is like, okay, like what's next? Like, what do I do now? Like, I worked so hard for this for so long. Um, and my coach, I remember being like getting off stage and like, he was congratulating me, hugging me, like, and afterwards I remember being like, okay, so like, what do I do now? And he's like, enjoy it. Like,
Oh,
you to just like sit and think and appreciate, and like you worked so hard for so long, like just enjoy it now. Like, don't stress, like, and I was like, okay, like, because I'm a very like routine person, but also like I'm very goal oriented, so I'm always like, what's the next thing, what's the next thing? And I just, this whole season I remember, I did extremely well in all my shows, and even after the shows, like when you're supposed to be kind of like celebrating, like I'd be like, okay, so what's next? Like, what's the next goal, and like what am I working towards now? And I think it's definitely tough, I think, for me. I mean, for other people too, but just to kind of like appreciate like how far you've come, and like how much you've worked towards that goal, and like you've accomplished it. But yeah, it was still very surreal, for sure.
wow. That's really beautiful. There's so much support in this community. And then you add on top of it all the support you already had, and knowing and relishing in the journey that you took to get there is so awesome. And I can imagine if an ongoing thought in your head for so long is, I am becoming an IFBB pro, or I will become, or the goal is to, then when your automatic thought is no longer necessary, but it's so automatic, it's like it
Yeah.
might come up because you've maybe affirmed it so long to support getting there. And then you have to be like, no, wait, I actually did it. Like, it's happened.
Yeah. So actually we were on the plane coming home, and like literally just got my pro card, and like we're sitting on the plane, and like I was on my phone, and I saw something about like a NPC. I think it might have been like they're moving nationals, or something like that. And I was like, I turned to my and I was like, oh, that would be a good show for me to do. And he just looked at me and was like, are you stupid? Like,
Yeah.
you just got your pro card, you're not doing NPC shows anymore. And I was like, oh, right, like right, never mind. And like
Yeah.
sometimes I still will be like, oh, this looks like a good and then I'm like, never mind. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's definitely crazy. Yeah, like you were saying, like it's kind of like your identity, like for so long, and then when it happens, you're like, what do I do now?
Yeah.
um but yeah, it's been crazy. It's definitely crazy.
Well, what were some of the moments throughout your career that really stand out to you, or maybe inform your view on yourself as an athlete?
um I would say the first time that I was like, I mean, it's not that I really doubted myself, but like there's the level of competition every year just keeps increasing. And I think that I definitely had a few moments like early on that I was kind of like, wow, what am I doing? Like, I don't know if this will ever happen for me, because I was comparing myself to a lot of, competitor like pros, and I was like, I don't look like that. Like, my physique doesn't look like that. Like, I just don't think that it's going to happen for me. But I think the first time that I kind of was like, all right, like maybe I might be able to pull this off was it was North Americans in 2019. I think it was 2019, or 2020. I can't remember. But anyways, it was my first national show. And it was the first time I had gotten first call outs. So I ended up placing 8th. It was a big first call out, but yeah, I got first call outs. My number was the first number they called, and I remember standing in kind of the center for a little bit before getting moved to the outside. But I just remember being so happy with myself for getting first call outs. It was a giant show that year. It was like in the midst of COVID. And I want to say there was over like 900 female competitors. It was like a ginormous show. And I had gotten my photos done by Will Whitman, and I was like, I had got first call outs, and I went over to him after, and I like, thanked him and introduced myself. And then I ran back to the hotel, and my mom was with me. And I remember just meeting her in the lobby, and like I was like so excited, and she was like had tears in her eyes, and I had tears in my eyes, and then I was like like emotional. And that was the first time that I kind of was like, okay, like maybe I can do this. Like you got first call outs, like in big class, like maybe you can achieve this goal. So that was definitely the first time that I was like, I guess that was kind of like reinforced. And then after that, honestly, like I want to say it was after Junior USA's this year. I won my class, and then for a lot of people were confused. So for Junior USA's, if people don't know this, they don't give a pro card to the first place winner of every class. It's only top 8. So I think is it 8?
Okay.
6.
Um,
I think it's 6.
okay.
Maybe.
For some reason, what's the show where it's only the top 3 in the overall?
Top 3 in the overall.
I thought that was Junior States, but I could be totally off.
I know that Junior USA's. Now I'm second guessing myself. I know that so there's usually 8 height classes typically.
I think so.
Yeah, so I think for Junior USA's they give you. I'm like, is it 4 or 6? I think it's 6.
Well,
And
it could have changed too.
Right. I mean, they change rules all the time, but yeah. So I remember winning my class, and then I had so many people messaging me, and they were like, congratulations, like you're a pro. And I was like, no.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so then it was after I had gotten off stage, and I stepped off stage, and I got feedback from Sandy and Becky from that show, and they were very complimentary and very like nice, and they were like, you better be doing they wanted me to do junior nationals. And I was like, I don't know, like it's a lot of travel, like a lot of time off work, like blah, blah, blah. So then she was like, well, where are you located? And I told her I was from Rhode Island. And she's like, then why are you Universe? Like that's local for you, like all this stuff. So I was like, okay. So they're very complimentary, and they gave me a lot of really good feedback from that show. And I think that was the second time that I was like, all right, like maybe you can do this. So yeah, and then after Universe, I was saying, I was not disappointed in my placing. Like, of course, I wanted it, but I also knew like I had work to do, and I was like not. And this sounds kind of negative, but I remember looking at my stage shots, and I was happy with my back shot, but I didn't love my front shot, and I was kind of like it's all right. And again, like that's us competitors always being like, well, this could have been better, this could have been better. But yeah, I definitely wasn't disappointed after that show. I knew that I like could have done better and brought a even better package. But yeah, I think those are probably the 2 times that I was very like that I considered that I could do this.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, like, I feel like everyone's kind of like that. Like I don't know, maybe I'm the only one. But even at shows, like sometimes I'll be standing there and I'm like, what are you doing?
Hmm.
There's so many people here. Like, you know, they're all amazing and they're all here for, to fight for their pro card. And, um, what are you doing? Like, should you be here? And then that little like voice of self-doubt kind of comes in. But I mean, at that point, you're already there, so you might as well just enjoy it and see what happens. So, but
Yes. And there's so much more that goes into prep than just being ready for the show day. And sometimes it's just show day's nice to celebrate all that work. And
definitely.
you did mention too how important taking time away is, and you had taken a 4-year break. So what was happening in that time and what brought you back? I don't even know if maybe you didn't know if you were coming back or what was kind of going on.
Yeah, so I had done a few shows that year. I think I had done like 2 shows. This was a while ago. Oh my goodness. And my body, like I was working with a different coach at this time, and my body just like wasn't responding the way that it normally did. And I was like, I don't know, I feel like something's wrong. Like I feel like as competitors, like we're all very in tune with ourselves. And when something feels off, like we know that it's off.
Mm.
And I just like, yeah, like I just knew that something was wrong. Like, and I couldn't really figure out what it was. And for me, it was mostly just like my digestion was really off. Like I was eating all the things that I normally ate, but I just like, I don't know, like my body just like wasn't responding and I was like very confused. So, um, I felt like I was just spinning my wheels. I was like trying to start a prep, but it just like wasn't really working. So I ended up telling that coach at the time, like, you know what, like I think I just need to stop. Like something's off and I don't know what it is. I need to figure it out. And I ended up going to a holistic doctor at this time. And I kind of reached out to her and I was like, I don't really know what's going on, but she basically was like, you have adrenal fatigue. And I was like, I don't even know what that is. So she basically was like, this is the protocol that you need to do. So I followed it and I was on a FODMAP diet. So I cut out a lot of foods that I, had eaten my whole life. Like gluten, not that I was like, eating bread every meal, but like, growing up as a kid, I had dairy, I had bread, I had, all this stuff. And so I ended up taking out a lot of the stuff that I had eaten for years. And turns out that I was gluten intolerant and lactose intolerant. And there's a few like fruits and veggies that I had to like stay away from for a while to like heal my gut. Um, and then also just like pulling back on training and exercise. And I remember she gave me this diary and she's like, I don't want you to track macros. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, she's like, I don't want you to measure. I don't want you to like track macros. I don't want you to step foot in a gym for a week. And I was like, this lady is nuts. Like, what are you talking about? Like, so I was like, okay, like, I guess, like, I'll follow what you tell me to do. So, she wanted me to just write down everything that I ate, but she didn't want me to measure it and she didn't want me to track it. So I did that for a week and she ended up calculating how much I was eating. And then she wanted me to pull up my fitness pal, which is what I was using to track. And I still use to track. And she's like, you are severely under eating for what you need to be eating. And she's like, this is half of your problem. And the other half is that you're pushing your body way too hard all the time. And I was like, okay. So I ended up healing my gut. And then I started, going back to the gym. I did CrossFit for a while. Really enjoyed it. I had a blast and I did that for probably close to 2 years just because I'm very, like I said, I'm very goal oriented. I was like, I'm not doing bodybuilding, but I want to do something kind of competitive. So I did that. And I had a really good time doing that, and I opened a business with my family. But then I had gotten an IUD placed for no real reason. Like, I wasn't having like horrible periods or anything like that. I just had done some research. I saw that IUDs were better for female athletes. I was like, you know what? Yeah, like, sure. Like, I wasn't, not that I wasn't good at taking birth control, but I just was like, I had been taking it for so long. So I was like, I want to change it up, try something different. So I got an IUD placed. And um, for someone that has been pretty thin their whole life, having more of a like a harder time like gaining weight, after I got my IUD placed, I had gained like 15 pounds in a matter of like, I want to say like over maybe a little over a month. Again, like very abnormal for me. I was like, something is wrong. Like, I felt like shit, to be honest with you, after I got it placed. So I went back to my gynecologist and I was like, you need to take this out. I was like, something's off. I don't like it. I want you to take it out. She's like, well, usually we suggest you leave it in for a while. Your body needs to regulate. I was like, out. I want it out.
Good for you.
So yeah, so she took it out. And then after she took it out, I lost like a little bit of weight. It felt a little bit better, but I was like, something's still wrong. Like, I don't know. So I got blood work done, and it came back that I had Graves' disease, which I was like, again, like, what is that? I was like, I don't know. I mean, I had heard of like thyroid disorders. We was like nothing like that ever ran in my family. I was like, I don't know. So, um, I went to go see a specialist, um, and she was like asking me my history, and I kind of told her, and I said, well, I did struggle with adrenal fatigue. And she looked right at me and she said, that's not a real thing. And I was like, okay, like, I'm pretty sure it is, but whatever. Like, didn't really love that doctor. I felt like she just kind of, you know, was pushing me off and was like, that's not a real thing. Your symptoms aren't real, like all this stuff. And she just wanted to put me on medication. And I was like, well, I don't really want to take medication unless I really, really have to. Like, you know, and she basically was like, well, you have two options. You take the medication or you have to get your thyroid removed. And I was like, no, I want a second opinion. Like, I don't think that not that I was like, you don't know what you're talking about, but I was like, I don't like those options. Like, I think that there's something going on, and I don't really know what it is, but I don't think that those are the options for me. So I went and saw another specialist, and she was like, I'm going to put you on a low dose of medication. So I started taking that. And at that point in time, I was extremely, extremely, extremely unhappy, very depressed, a ton of anxiety. I was like really struggling. I reached out to my current coach, Andrew Barry, and I kind of filled him in on what was going on. And someone told me that he was like a hormone guru and was like extremely intelligent, really good coach. So I reached out to him, and I had no intentions of competing again, really. I was like, at this point, I just want to get my body back to a normal homeostasis, like back to where I kind of was. And so he started working with me and got me off of all of my not all of my medication. The one medication I was taking for my thyroid, when I first like met with him, he was like, I don't really think that you have Graves' disease. He's like, I think that the IUD really just like threw your body off completely. Like, I just don't think that your body really like, you know, responded with that very well. So got me off all my medication. You know, I started losing the weight, started feeling better, put me on really good protocols, all this stuff. My blood work was like back to normal. And then I was like, okay, I think I want to compete again. And he's like, all right, like, yeah, we can definitely do that. So we started working together, and you know, we did our first show together, did Vermont, and I got third, I think, in my class. And then we did the Cutler, and we won the novice overall together. And then it was like every show that we have done together, we've just been like building momentum, momentum, momentum. And like I said, we've been working together for four years. Um, and then we got my pro card. Yeah. So yeah, I didn't think that I would. It's not that I didn't think I would ever get back to the stage. I just didn't know if like my body would like respond again. Um, and it was definitely a very miserable time. Like I really feel for people when they are struggling with like hormonal issues or just like any type of like issue with their body, like, and it's not in their own control, because that's a very awful feeling to be checking all of the boxes on your end and have your body be doing like the complete opposite of like what you need it to be doing. Because then you're like, well, what am I supposed to be doing? Like you feel like you're just spinning your wheels. So yeah,
Yes.
definitely not a good feeling.
What a journey in those 4 years for you. Dang. Well, something that stood out to me there was you really advocated for yourself along the way. And I think that's a key takeaway is like be willing to ask questions, try new things, advocate, get second opinions, seek out more information. Like if you're doing all your controllables and then this feels out of control, you might as well add another controllable, which is like research and reach out. So I think it's really awesome that you did that and it relit that fire to come back to compete because you were functioning at a better level. And I think it's hard sometimes as athletes to actually face and address those things that we feel are wrong or we recognize are wrong because we just want to keep pushing. But then when we do, we end up being better for it. And like right now I'm doing a gut protocol and I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't really have gut issues, but I had taken this antibiotic that just wreaked havoc on my whole system. And because of that, my coach was like, let's be proactive and because he thought I had like candida overgrowth. And he's like, I don't think it's a severe case, but we don't want it to get worse. And I couldn't push the amount of food I was pushing anymore. And it wasn't even that. It's not like we were in this incredible, surplus. And so now by pulling back, we're treating it like a little mini cut, 19 weeks, 18 weeks post show. And then it's going to set me up to hopefully reverse more. But if I kept ignoring the signs or didn't communicate those things with him, we maybe wouldn't have been able to take my improvement season even further, which is obviously the goal is come out of keto. Because when you're doing like low FODMAP and then you're on a candida, it's very much usually keto based, like not a lot of sugar or carbs. Is that what you had to do as well?
Actually, so I did the FODMAP. I figured out all my intolerances, but doing just like a little bit of like research, like my body does not do well with like a lot of fat. Like when I have a lot of fat, like my body actually, I don't know, like it just does not like digest or function very well. So I usually keep my fats pretty low, but my carbs are like pretty high. And I have a very high metabolism for the most part. Thank you to my father. He's like 66 and he still eats like muffins, bagels, ice cream, all the things. Like, and he's just like still like super skinny, not super skinny, but he's very like fit and stuff. So yeah. But yeah, my body, it's crazy though. Like I don't know, like everyone is so different. And that's another thing, like with training and diet, like people always ask me, like, well, what do you eat and what do you do and and I'm like, it's not going to be the same. Like, I could follow your protocol, but my body would probably not respond the way that yours does. But yeah, when I did the FODMAP though, I had to pull out like a ton of just like extra like sugars and she didn't want me doing, so my problem was like I was so, and I still have issues, but like I was so scared to like gain weight, so I was like under eating, not really knowing that I was under eating, but just like being cautious and like um but I was doing a lot of like sucralose, like diet this, diet that, Quest bars, like the Walden Farms. Like I went through that whole like phase.
Mhm.
And that I think was really what my body was like, what are you doing? Give me real things. Like I need real substance. Like eating a Quest bar does not count for like your lunch. Like that's not okay. But yeah, definitely the gut protocol like is definitely such a smart thing to do. And like people are like, well, I don't have digestive issues. And it's like, you don't think you do, but you probably do. Like, I don't know. It's definitely one of those things that I think that it does not hurt to do like a reset kind of. And that's what we're kind of, I've done them before with Andrew. After I've done like 3 or 4 of them with him so far, and we call it like kind of like a detox phase. So we do this substance or this supplement called MediPure. And we add it to my diet, and we do it 2 times a day. It's like a shake. So instead of doing like a protein shake, like I do that 2 times a day, my protein is lowered, my carbs are increased, my fats are usually pretty much the same. And then we also pull back on like training, cardio, like all of that stuff, and kind of let your body like reset. So I just finished one of those, I think it was like last week or the week before. And I'm currently gonna go get blood work next week to just kind of make sure that everything's good. But yeah, it's definitely it's super smart.
That.
Like you were saying, like you can't push a body that is not responding. Like it's not gonna do it. Your body is so smart that it's gonna do whatever it needs to do to survive. And like whether you want it to or you don't, it's going to do it. And your body like literally is probably like 10 steps ahead of you like all the time. So yeah.
I love that perspective. My coach was like, by doing this, we're potentially creating like a better environment to grow, because otherwise your body's literally going to be fighting you by resolving things you're not resolving.
Mhm.
And like you said, I didn't think I had issues. And then we started this protocol and I'm starting to notice changes and I cut caffeine cold turkey. So I'm kind of just like, yeah, girl, I know, but it's like little changes though, because it's like you go from being sometimes an addict in a prep because like you have no energy, nothing tastes like you're cutting a lot of food potentially and you need it. So anyway, besides the point, I've noticed a difference, and I love hearing someone like you also share some of the approaches you take. Like it's okay to take time where you're resting, or you're giving your body a different protocol, or you're giving yourself time to heal in new ways, or consider that. And I think that's such a great example. And is that something you do as a coach yourself? Like how has your maybe journey influenced the way you show up as a coach?
Definitely. And I don't, I'm, I mean, I've said this a few times, but like, I'm definitely like my biggest critic. Like, I'm always like, tough on myself, but, um, I, I have a hard time resting. I have a hard time taking a step back. I have a hard time not going to the gym. Like, I definitely struggle with that. Cause like in my brain, I still have kind of like, I don't want to say eating disorder tendencies, but I have that mindset. And it was explained to me when I was first diagnosed that basically, like the sooner you can get it under control and, get into remission, the better it is for you, period. Like, no matter what. And I unfortunately was very resistant. Um, and I had a very severe eating disorder for 6 to 7 years, where it became my identity and who I was and controlled my every thought and emotion and everything. So trying to come out of that was very difficult. And then the other thing that they said was that you're always going to be an anorexic. And at first, I remember being like, I don't think so. Like, I think I'll get this under control. And I definitely have it, much better than I did before. But I have that thought process, those tendencies, like the way I think about things is not the normal way to think about things. For myself, like with other people and with like I'm definitely like everyone's biggest supporter. I'm always telling my clients like it's okay to take a step back. It's okay if you're not perfect. Like if you have one meal that you quote unquote mess up, like that doesn't mean that you are, a bad person or that you're a failure or like any of those things. And then when it comes to myself, I'm still learning to like be nice to myself. So, I mean, I can take that advice and give it to other people, but it's definitely a different animal to like give that to yourself. But for sure, I actually just had one of my clients, she works as a nurse and she is crazy busy all the time. So, and she has a lot of like life stuff going on. And, you know, she was, you know, super upset because the scale was up and she's like, I don't understand why. And um, she was very frustrated. And I was like, well, I mean, she works crazy hours. So I was like, when was the last time you took a day off? When was the last time you like took a nap or slept or skipped the gym, or you know what I mean? So I ended up putting her on a little like deload kind of, and I was like, we're gonna pull back. I want you to rest. I want you to just like chill, watch Netflix, like not do anything, and just like kind of take a step back, like reset. And ended up being like the best thing that she could do. So I always try to give people like that advice, like because when the scale is up for no reason, it's usually like one of two things for the most part. For women, it's usually like hormonal reasons, like your time of the month, your cycle, you're ovulating, whatever. Or just like your body is like trying to tell you something like, hey, I'm tired, like I need a break. And pushing is sometimes like obviously more detrimental than it is like helpful. And as women, I think that we're prone to like less is not a good thing. Like we have to do more. Like we always have to like put these things on our plate and we have to get all of these things done and check all of the boxes. And sometimes we just need to like watch Netflix and like not leave the couch and tell our husbands to like bring me a snack. You know what I mean? Like sometimes we just need to put our feet up and be, oh, it's okay to like do those things and put yourself first. And I know it's definitely difficult for women to do, and especially if you have kids, like I know that that's like a different animal, but you know, watching movies and chilling is sometimes what you need to do. But
That's the message I needed to hear today. Truly, thank you for that.
watch the Netflix, girl. Watch the
I have a TV and I like barely know how to use it. I need to like maybe I'll do that. It's like it's ridiculous. Also, I think too when you're such a high achiever or like maybe you struggle with depression, anxiety, I know you mentioned that, as have I. Sometimes you associate slowing down as almost like similar to falling into a depressive state. So I don't know if you've had that or if that sounds crazy, but you're like there and you're laying down or you're just chilling and sometimes it feels really good and other times you're like, am I not motivated and I'm not pushing? Do I need to be, you know?
Yeah, definitely. Cause like for me, like the first like sign of like that type of stuff like coming back is like I'm just like lacking like motivation and then like just like the energy to do things. So yeah, when you're like laying there and you're just like watching Netflix, you're like chill for a second and then you're like, is this a bad thing? Like, does
Yeah,
this mean something else? But yeah.
totally. Well, I appreciate that you can relate. And I would love, before we get your information so people can connect with you and work with you or anything like that, what would be your best advice for someone who's never competed before but wants to? And then your best advice for someone on their road to pro?
Ooh. Um, Best advice for someone that's never competed before. Okay. Um, First thing, it's gonna take longer than you want it to and longer than you anticipate. But that's okay. Like everyone's journey, and then also everyone's journey is different. Like there's very, very few people that do like 2 shows and turn pro. Like that's like the 1% of people that can do that. So it's gonna take longer than you anticipate, and that's totally okay. Everyone's journey is very different. And then also the biggest thing that I can give you or advice that I can give you is to find a good coach. Like, please do your research. Like, just because you compete 2 times does not mean that you are a qualified coach. I'm sorry, it doesn't. And I don't mean that rudely. I really don't. Like, I work with general fitness clients. I don't work with competitors. Not that I would never, but I don't feel like I have as much knowledge as I should. And I don't want to like put someone's, uh like their competitive career, like in quote unquote jeopardy. Like I just don't think that I am as qualified. So yeah, doing your research, finding a good coach, and then when you have a good coach and things are maybe not taking too long in your opinion, jumping from coach to coach is not the answer. Like if the relationship with a coach is not meshing well, that's a completely different story. But like if you didn't get first place at your competition, that doesn't mean that it's the coach's fault, and that doesn't mean that that's not the right coach for you. Like the grass is not always greener on the other side. Like I have been with Andrew Berry, like I said, for 4.5, 5 years, and we have gone through ups and downs together. But the main thing is that we have worked together. He knows my body better probably than I know myself. He gives me the best advice for myself, and I trust him 1,000%. So sticking with a good coach is probably the best thing that you can do, because they know your body. Like jumping from coach to coach, like they're gonna have to start from like ground zero to figure out like who you are, how you function, what your metabolism's like, all of those things. So sticking with a coach and finding a good coach is definitely like the number one piece of advice. And then advice for someone that's on their way or trying to become a pro. Man, so many things that I want to tell people. I need to like write a book.
Yeah.
Experience.
Do it.
Oh my goodness. I would say, honestly, enjoy it. Enjoy. I try to tell this to myself a lot. Enjoy all of it, even the crappy parts. Even when you're doing double cardio and you're like, oh my God, I'm so tired. Like, when you're miserable, when you feel like, you just need to stop or anything like that. Like when you're doing the work it takes to get there, like that is the journey, and that is the important part. So enjoy all of that and try to make those the good memories too, and not just like the, okay, I'm just doing it, like to get through it. Like do it and enjoy it and embrace it, because that's like, because literally when you're done competing, or you hang up the heels or you take a break or whatever, you're gonna look back and be like, man, I miss it, or man, I wish I had a better mindset in that moment. And just trying to be positive in those moments for sure. Like still something that I'm working on, but I definitely have gotten much better over the years with. But yeah, enjoy every process, every step of the way.
Love that. And I appreciate you sharing that advice, because I know you had a lot in your mind that was going through there, but that's wonderful information. And I'd love for people to follow the rest of your journey and keep connecting with you. So how can they do that?
I am on Instagram, _Torinator Fitness _. And you can find my link tree in there with like all my information, all my codes to support, and also like posing and stuff like that. You can definitely hit me up on Instagram to connect.
Awesome. I'll put all of that in the show notes page. So I'll include your link tree as well. But you guys, that's at celestial.fit/podcast. It's all alphabetized in the category section. So if you're not listening first thing on Friday, then you'll scroll down to the category section, find her name. If you are listening first thing on Friday, it's at the top of the page. Now, you won't just see how to connect, but you're also going to see a full summary of the episode timestamps, and the topics that we covered, so you can tell your friends and teammates to tune in as well and let them know what to expect. But Tori, thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. Truly, you were like, oh, I had people reach out and they wanted you to on the podcast, and that was just like so surreal to me. So thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. It was a pleasure to feature your story. And for those of you who are still listening, by the way, my fire alarm went off during this episode. So that brief intermission, that maybe gap, if it's hearable, I don't know. I'm gonna edit that little bit, but it's because you set it on fire, girl. I was like waiting to say that.
Yes.
Alrighty. Well, thank you guys so much for listening. Hope you have an amazing rest of your day, night, or morning, wherever you are in the world while you're listening to this episode. Just make it awesome.